Greetings and salutations, guys, and a happy new year to everyone. Here with my review of episode 6 of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. There's going to be full spoilers going forward for episode 6. Zero Friends Again was the title of this episode. Even reading that quote, man, all the titles are quotes, but that one's a heartbreaker because I felt so bad for KB in this episode. But ultimately, so good for her, too. I didn't get to review last week's episode, not because it was Christmas Eve, but because I was sick as hell. I had a great Christmas cold going on. So I felt bad I couldn't review that episode, and I still have a Christmas cough that's lingering into the new year. So let's see how I get through this video and how many times I have to cough or pause or hide a cough. We'll see. Maybe I'll get through the whole thing. Who knows? I loved last week's episode, which I didn't, do a full review of, but I thought it was great. I thought that we were waiting for sort of that turn with Jod. He was going to have to betray them in some way, but this was a pretty intense way he did it. With the challenge to Fern, and while maybe he wouldn't have gone through with killing her, and just the threat in that moment was very well done, and I thought that was all really cool and really compelling. This episode, as it began, I was a little nervous. I didn't love the opening few scenes. Well, except for maybe the literal opening scene, because, hey, a slide. Slides are super fun. And also you get a double callback here because it's going to make you think of the Goonies again, but also Empire Strikes Back because it evokes Luke sliding down underneath Cloud City. But after that, first and foremost, the volume is so strange because sometimes it looks so great and sometimes it's so convincing. And then there's a scene like the one on the platform at the beginning of this episode where Jod gets to the surface and he's getting surrounded by all the pirates, and everything looked really fake. It didn't look like anyone was in that environment, and it was weird because even in this show, there's great stuff with the volume, so I always wonder what that is, the exact elements that have to be right about the cinematography and scene to scene, moment to moment, to make the volume look the way it can. We know it can, but when it's off, it's off. So that was kind of pulling me out of it. And I also didn't love the stuff with Jod trying to convince the pirates to go with him to At-Aten. I just didn't think that scene fully gelled. There was something that felt a little off about it. So I was a little wary of this episode, thinking, oh, maybe this one won't be as good as the rest of the show. And I should have known that Skeleton Crew, you're always there for me. It got me good. As the episode progressed, I thought it was another great installment. It was interesting because Neil had the episode all about him a couple weeks ago, and then you kind of assumed all the kids would get their own episode. But they didn't do that with the following episode. That was not really an episode about one of the kids so much. But this one, of course, was KB's episode. And I thought it was an excellent spotlight for the character, and it was an excellent spotlight for Carriana Crater in the role. I mean, she's been very good throughout the series. All the kids have been excellent. They've been so well cast, and I think all these directors work great with them. You had to figure Bryce Dallas Howard especially. She's done such good work directing Star Wars already through The Mandalorian, and even an episode of Book of Boba Fett that was basically a great episode of The Mandalorian in the middle of that show. Her own background, growing up on sets, you kind of figure she's got to be great with kids, and I think that it showed here that she is, because it was this great spotlight episode for Karen, a creator who had to go through a lot here as a character who's not hugely emotive. She underplays, and I think to great effect and some very funny effect, but she had to tell us a lot here about sort of the vulnerability of this character as she's going through this sort of near-death experience throughout the episode. And I thought that everything, the way she was playing it, everything the way it was directed, I think it worked so well. These moments, when she's sitting there on the ground and she can't move and she's telling Wim what to do, but it feels like she's really at death's door. Even though I was pretty sure she was going to get through it, it still felt very harrowing and very, sad and emotional. As she, these little tidbits we get of her backstory and the idea that, we never think about, oh, she's this sort of cyborg character, which we know in Star Wars exists, going back to Lobot in Empire Strikes Back, or even Luke Skywalker when he gets his robotic hand. But the idea that she is a survivor of some sort of accident, we don't get the details. We don't need the details. But that, that's why she's got all these mechanical parts, is to keep her alive from something terrible that presumably happened in her history. And I really did think that the way this worked, this ultimately using KB as this, representation of a disabled character, was really lovely, really touching, and I thought just was tremendously effective. As she kind of explained her perspective as someone who, feels different, but doesn't want to be perceived that way, but keeps saying she can do everything when, she's putting herself in danger ultimately by doing that, especially with someone like Fern, who is going to be always wanting to step into danger. And I thought, what we learned about her through this, and then her and Fern and having their little rift and then coming back together at the end, and even, just being two kids proclaiming that you're my best friend. Really sweet stuff. This show just, again, I've already mentioned how it could have really not worked having it center on these kids, and I think it just works tremendously well. And you really care about these kids. This is a great group of characters that I'm bummed that there's only 2 more episodes of this show after this. I really hope it gets a second season, because I think that these are characters I would love to see more adventures for. Also, discovering more about how their entry into the greater Star Wars universe, because of this whole idea that they're from this planet that was so separated. We're getting obviously closer and closer to returning to At-Aten. With only 2 episodes left, I wonder if next week will be the week when they actually get there. I have a feeling it will, especially now that we've got the pirates heading there as well. But yeah, this was all really, really great. The emotional center of the episode really worked. And then I really enjoyed everything with the crabs. The fact that they're these cute little mechanical crabs, or trash crabs, as Wim called them, but that ultimately, instead of leading them to safety, they were leading them to just feed them to, I guess, maybe their king or queen crab, was very funny, as was Wim saying, why does he keep trusting the wrong people? Very true, Wim. And also, this was the episode where we got classic Phil Tippett stop motion animation for this crab creature. Really cool to see. I love how it was blended together with the digital effects. I criticized earlier some of the use of the volume at one point in this episode, in the midst of an episode and a show where I think most of the effects have been great. I think that's what really makes it stand out when it's not great. It's that jarring thing of suddenly being like, oh, that didn't work in that moment. Because all the rest of this, I love the look of that crab creature, and seeing that in the environment of all that and all its little babies around it. And then of course the escape. Which, the escape from the crab itself was, pretty quick. But then getting the ship away when the ship was going to be, demolished, smashed up, torn apart, and how they did it. And, of course, pressing the emergency button you never press. Don't cross the streams. Once something like that's introduced, don't press a button. You got to press that button. And the reveal that basically the spaceship shed its skin, that was really cool. It's just something we haven't seen before, in Star Wars. It reminded me kind of like the Batmobile in Batman Returns. I guess there's a version of this in The Dark Knight as well. But, the Batmobile splitting apart to reveal the smaller vehicle inside, where it's basically the same cockpit, especially in Batman Returns. That's what it reminded me of, that this has a basically second layer, the ship that they're flying, that it can cut that off, and that they can escape in the interior layer of the ship. That was really cool. Yeah, so I thought another really great episode of this show. I know that this one, plot-wise, was, not moving things a lot, except for having Jod, reunite with, I always say Jod, is it Jod or Jode? I always forget. What do you say? Him, reuniting with the pirates, the threat of death still, but he's now got them convinced to at least check out At-Aten. Otherwise, this was really focused on the character-centric stuff with KB, and her relationship with Fern, and then her bonding with Wim. And I thought that was all really well done. I even liked the little, sort of subplot of Fern and Neil, and, the fact that Fern, again, kind of unwittingly putting her friends in danger because she doesn't think about their limitations. And I thought that was kind of a good through line here with, Neil, who just physically can't climb as well as her because he's shorter with, shorter legs, and her having to kind of take a moment to think about this and to figure out a way to help him. I love this group of characters, and I'm bummed there's only 8 episodes of this show. Anyway, are you enjoying Skeleton Crew as much as I am? Let me know in the comments. Oh, are you enjoying the score as much as I am? Because once again, Mick Giacchino, I think, is really delivering here. The music during that big final sequence with the ship trying to escape, I think, was one of his best pieces of music so far for this show. All right, guys, once more, very happy New Year to you, and I'll see you in 2025. Oh, and if you can like and subscribe, that would be a great way to enter the new year, wouldn't it? I think so.